My name's Grant Rokobauer. I'm the Team Leader Strategic Planning at Wallandilly Shire Council. We are the southwest fringe of Sydney, and my brief for today is to talk about the coexistence of agriculture in the periurban environment. So I thought it would be good to start by defining what the periurban environment is. In the recent review of local government, two periurban councils were identified for Sydney, Wallandilly and Richmond. And basically what the idea is behind the periurban environment is you've got rural areas that have been farmed for a long time. Sydney comes along and is expanding, and you've got this area in between. Kind of this interface between the urban environment and the rural environment. And so they call it the periurban. It's this horrible combination of a Greek preposition and a Latin word, which means around the urban area. So I want to talk about 4 strategies that we've used to assist in the coexistence of agriculture in that environment. That's the 4 C's: controls, community education, compliance, and communication. So controls, and like Danny, I'm from a statutory planning background. Controls are very familiar to those of us in planning. Here's an excerpt from the Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulation. For designated development, what this is if you meet certain thresholds, you have to go through a whole lot more assessment if you want to get your agriculture approved. This is a piece from Council's DCP, and the control here is about landscaping. So if you want to do agriculture, you've got to provide certain amounts of landscaping in certain locations to help buffer your impacts on other people around. At the pointy end, development consents are issued with conditions, which can require anything from management plans to particular hours in which you can do things, or particular ways that you have to undertake your agriculture. So this is a piece from a poultry farm consent. And you can see it's things like cleaning up the litter and that kind of thing. So this is kind of the traditional way that planners have managed land use conflict, stack up a whole heap of requirements on the agriculture so they won't bother anyone. Now, what we've started to do, and have been doing for some time actually, is educating the communities that are moving into this kind of an environment. So this is a condition from a development consent for a greenfield subdivision at a village called Appin. And what it basically says is every time you sell a block, you have to give people a map showing what's in the area. Now, we put this on a fairly large developer, and they didn't object to it when they found it, because the way they were marketing that particular subdivision was, you're coming to the rural area, you're leaving Sydney, and that's the product we want to sell. Realistically, I don't think many developers would object to a condition like this, because essentially they would be arguing that they shouldn't have to tell their customers about the product they're selling. The Rural Living Handbook, this was a partnership between a number of councils and Sydney Catchment Authority, and what it is, it's a guide for people who are going for the larger lots to explain some of the things that they need to know about managing that kind of land. And finally, this is something that's gotten a bit of attention. There's a cabinet minute somewhere in state government looking into this practice that Wallandilly do. Whenever we issue a 149 certificate, so that's the planning certificate when a block of land is bought and sold, we put this attachment to it. It's not actually part of the certificate itself, it's just an attachment. And what it says is, you need to understand when you buy rural land that rural activities happen around you. So yesterday was a classic example. We had a phone call come in, person was complaining about being able to hear a dog bark, and they ended with, "We moved here for the rural environment." And so the aim of this is that they'll read it and go, "Oh, so there are actually poultry farms in rural areas." So community education, it's been a really big part of what we do, and we've found that it really has helped people understand before they get in what they're signing up for when they live in the periurban environment. The next part is compliance. Now, we've got a legislative system that's all about impacts and protecting the environment and amenity. So what happens though is you have these agricultural activities which will have some impact. when you put blood and bone on a field, it smells. That's how it is. And so what happened, this is from 2009, we had our councillors from a notice of motion, so that's completely initiated by councillors, not by staff, make a policy position that if a farmer is reasonable and their activity is necessary for the agricultural pursuit, council will take no action on a complaint, which is a pretty strong stance for elected people to take. Communication is the other part. Now, we've got a Rural Industry Liaison Committee. What that is a meeting of council, University of Sydney, which has a campus in our LGA, DPI, or whatever they're called this week, and a heap of local farmers, and we come together and we share information. And what we found is a lot of the traditional battles, when you actually sit down and talk about it, you can find solutions that work and meet what everyone needs. We had a rural land use forum, which was about bringing the community into that process, as well as a wider range of stakeholders, and that's come up with a series of recommendations to help encourage agriculture in the peri-urban environment. And finally, we've made the most of opportunities that are out there to meet with agencies and talk through these kind of issues. I've blacked out some names to protect the innocent, about agriculture and moving forward, so that council is part of that dialogue, because often council is the custodian of a lot of good information there. So my lightning talk is now over. 4 C's: controls, community education, good compliance policy, and communication. Good.